The lights are hot, the room packed, journalists fidget. C-SPAN cameras hum like insects. A half-smirk curls on Karoline Leavitt's lips as she adjusts her mic, leans forward and locks eyes with her opponent. The audience stiffens. "You know." "What?" she says, voice rising above the buzz. "If you hate this country so much, why don't you just go back to India?" A beat of silence. No cough, no chair squeak, just a sonic void, thick and suffocating. The words land like a slap. Kash Patel doesn't move, doesn't blink. His fingers rest still on the table. His expression, flat, measured, controlled, like a soldier in the moment before the command to strike. Across the stage, Leavitt folds her arms, convinced she's just scored a headline. A small laugh escapes from someone in the back. Then it stops, smothered by an almost sacred discomfort. People exchange glances. A reporter's pen slips from their grip. A moderator's jaw twitches, caught between instinct and protocol. On Twitter, someone's already clipped the moment. It has no context. Just the words, the sneer. The firestorm is seconds away. But here, in this breathless pause, it's Kash's stillness that holds the room hostage. A man who served under presidents, investigated terrorists, held the nation's secrets. Now being told he doesn't belong. A college student watching from home mouths the words with disbelief. A veteran leans closer to his screen. A mother in Detroit grabs the remote and rewinds. Kash finally shifts. Slowly. A half-turn of the head. Not toward Leavitt, but toward the crowd. Toward the nation. His voice hasn't risen. He hasn't said a thing. Yet every eye is glued to him. Leavitt's confidence falters for a flicker of a second. Just enough to notice. Because what Kash Patel does next is something no one saw coming. It wasn't supposed to be a moment. It was supposed to be just another segment. Wednesday night, prime time. One more debate in a sea of talking heads. But this night was different. The country had been simmering. Weeks of headlines about immigration raids, candidates flinging coded language, voters split between nostalgia and inclusion. CNN billed it as a clash of visions. What they got was something else entirely. On one side, Kash Patel, national security advisor turned political outsider, calm, methodical. The man who rarely raised his voice, yet somehow made you lean in. On the other, Karoline Leavitt, former White House press aide, rising megastar, polished, punchy, armed with applause-line venom and Instagram-ready indignation. The topic was immigration, but beneath it pulsed a deeper question. Who gets to call themselves American? Kash spoke of policy with precision. Border security, lawful, reform, national dignity. But it wasn't the details that stuck. It was the way he said them. Steady, unflinching, as if he belonged on that stage not because someone let him in, but because he built the floorboards himself. Leavitt, by contrast, played to the crowd, smirks between lines. Interruptions framed as dominance. She scoffed when Patel mentioned his family's story, rolling her eyes with a kind of theatrical impatience that begged for a meme. "You talk about the Constitution like you understand it," she sneered at one point, "but real Americans know what this country was built on." And there it was. The shift. It started as a subtle tilt, a performance veering into something darker, a barely disguised resentment, sharpened not by facts, but by what Patel represented. The outsider who refused to play the outsider. In living rooms across the country, viewers felt it. The moment when disagreement turned personal, when debate gave way to dismissal, a slow drumbeat built online. Texts between friends. "Did she really say that?" Clips circulated in real time. 10 seconds here, 15 there. Some cheered. Others recoiled. Patel never flinched. Not when she cut him off. Not when she implied he didn't get American values. His gaze stayed level. His voice never cracked. But Leavitt, she pushed harder. Not out of passion, but calculation. As if daring him to break. As if his silence was a challenge to her dominance. And then, she leaned forward, smiled, and dropped the line that made America gasp. Karoline Leavitt didn't stumble into the spotlight. She built it, brick by brick, tweet by tweet, fresh out of college. She clawed her way into the Trump communications machine, dazzling mentors with her unapologetic fire. Not strategy, not policy chops. Fire. The kind that could light up a camera and split a room in half. She learned fast. Outrage was currency. And she spent it well. Cable news loved her. A blonde millennial bulldozer in red heels, armed with snark and certainty. "I say what conservatives are thinking," she'd boast in interviews. Never mind the thinking part, what mattered was the viral moment. The dunk. The meme. She made her name by going loud where others flinched. When a colleague suggested toning down her take on DACA recipients, she laughed and doubled down. "Illegals," she said on air, knowing full well the weight of the word. She didn't just cross lines, she danced on them. Her clips became fuel for the culture war machine. TikToks, reels, out-of-context bites framed as brave truth-telling. Her followers swelled. Comment sections exploded with fire emojis and dogs, whistles. "America first," she'd say, always with that same practiced smile. A smile that meant your America, not ours. Behind the scenes, allies cheered. Opponents gritted their teeth. Critics called her calculated, shallow, cruel. But Karoline didn't care. She wasn't here to win minds. She was here to win screens. A rally in Arizona, she waved off a protester with a smirk. "You people always play the victim." When asked on Fox News about a Muslim congressional candidate, she laughed. "I don't think Sharia law and our Constitution play well together. Do you?" Each moment sharpened her brand. And she knew it. Division wasn't a byproduct. It was the engine. And now, here she was again. Another stage, another opponent, another moment to leave a mark, but this time, the target was different. This time, she was facing a man who wouldn't flinch, wouldn't shout, wouldn't give her the clip she was fishing for. Kash Patel didn't just know the Constitution. He defended it. In courtrooms, in classified briefings, in rooms she'd never been allowed to enter. But Karoline couldn't see that. All she saw was someone who looked like a talking point, a perfect foil, a chance to jab, dismiss, dominate. So she did what she always did. Leaned in, tightened the smile, threw the punch, disguised as a sentence. But this time, she picked the wrong man. Before the headlines, before the hearings, before the smear campaigns and hashtags, there was a boy in Queens. His name was Kashyap. His parents had come with nothing. Literally. 2 suitcases. A map they barely read. And a faith that somehow, if they worked hard enough, America would make room for them. They took night shifts. Saved everything. Taught their son 2 things. Never forget where you came from, and never let it define your ceiling. Kash grew up navigating 2 worlds, Indian at home, American at school. At family dinners, it was Gujarati prayers and spice-laced curries. At lunch, in the cafeteria, it was questions like, "Do you wear a turban?" or "Are you related to 7-Eleven people?" He smiled, brushed it off, focused on grades, sports, respect. Because deep down, even as a kid, he understood. To survive in America, he'd have to be twice as good. Just to be seen as enough. Law, school followed. Then public service. Not for the salary, for the mission, because he believed this country could live up to its promise. He joined the Justice Department, fought terrorism, sat in rooms where lives hung in the balance. No ego, no spotlight, just the work. Later, he became a top aide in national intelligence. Hand-picked, trusted, cleared. He carried briefcases into the Oval Office, crafted security briefs presidents read before dawn, traveled under aliases, worked cases you'll never hear about. And still, at press briefings, he'd be called the Indian guy. Online trolls whispered about divided loyalties. Commentators questioned his real Americanness. He never responded. Not once. Because Kash Patel knew who he was, and he knew that service didn't always come with applause. In 2019, he found himself at the center of impeachment hearings. Not by choice, but by duty. He testified with calm clarity, while Twitter mobs spun their own myths. He walked out of the storm without flinching, not because he was numb, but because he was forged in it. He never played the victim, never wore his ethnicity like armor or bait. He just showed up, again and again, for a country that didn't always show up for him. He wasn't flashy. He didn't chase clicks. He chose dignity over attention. And when Karoline Leavitt smirked across the stage that night, when she dangled the bait, he saw it for what it was. He had heard it all before. The insinuations, the whispers, the quiet doubts wrapped in loud patriotism. But he also remembered his mother's voice after her third double shift. You don't have to prove anything. Just be better, and they'll see. So he spent his life being better, quieter, smarter, steadier. He didn't ask for recognition, but that night, on that stage, it found him anyway. Because while Karoline tried to play politics, he was living. Proof of something deeper, that American identity isn't inherited, it's earned, not by bloodline, but by sacrifice. He didn't need to prove he was American, but he kept doing it anyway. So when the insult came, he didn't flinch. Back in the studio, the energy has shifted. They're deep into the segment now. 3 moderators, 5 cameras, an audience tuned in nationwide. The debates move to immigration, statistically neutral ground, but emotionally charged. And Karoline Leavitt knows it. She's on offense, rapid fire, cutting off questions, spitting out stats with dramatic flair. Whether they're true hardly matters. This isn't about facts. It's about dominance, optics, clicks. And that's why the border is a war zone, she declares, gesturing wildly. People like you refuse to admit it. Kash sits, still and precise, hands folded, a pen untouched beside him. He offers a small nod before replying. I've worked counter-terrorism on the border, he says evenly, and I don't use words like war zone unless they're accurate. That kind of language, Karoline cuts in. Oh, please, she scoffs. You were in a suit at a desk. Spare us the frontline fantasy. The crowd reacts. A few gasps, a few stifled laughs. Kash doesn't blink. I was in Laredo during cartel crackdowns, he replies. You were in college tweeting about Chick-fil-A. There's a flicker, a pause. It's not a zinger, but it lands. Karoline blinks. She shifts in her seat, crosses and uncrosses her legs, looks to the moderator, but the floor hasn't moved. Kash still has it, so she pushes harder. You want to sound tough now, but when it comes to defending our values, you're too busy worrying about offending people. No, Kash says. I'm just not in the business of dehumanizing others to sound patriotic. The line slices through the air like glass. For a beat, Karoline stares at him. The smile fades. She could let it go. Pivot, reset. But something in her demands the last word. She sits up straighter, leans forward. You know what? She says, voice dripping with condescension. If you hate this country so much, she tilts her head, her lips forming the line with deliberate cruelty. Why don't you just go back to India? There it is. The room freezes. No one claps. No one laughs. Even the moderator drops their eyes. Karoline smirks, believing she's landed a fatal blow. The kind that will go viral, rile up her base, seal her image as fearless. But Kash doesn't flinch. He breathes. And instead of walking away, Patel leaned forward and said this: silence. Kash Patel leans forward, elbows on the table, eyes steady. The studio is still. Even the cameras seem to hesitate. He clears his throat, softly. My father, he begins, landed at JFK with $100 in his pocket and a head full of dreams he couldn't afford. His voice is calm, quiet, measured, but every syllable feels heavier than the last. He worked night shifts for 30 years, at a warehouse, then at a gas station. No one ever told him to go back, because even the people who didn't understand him respected the grind. He turns his gaze toward Leavitt. Not with anger, with something deeper. Disappointment. My mother cleaned hospital rooms, didn't speak English for most of her life, but she raised 2 sons who now carry clearances. Higher than you can imagine. Who've protected this country in courtrooms and crisis rooms you'll never be invited into. A low murmur stirs in the studio. And you want to tell me to go back? He says, almost incredulous, almost amused. Karoline, I never left. A pause. You want to know what America gave me? The chance to serve. I helped track terrorists. I briefed 2 presidents. I sat across from world leaders and defended our flag, not for likes or airtime, but because it mattered. The camera slowly zooms in. His voice doesn't rise, but something in it sharpens. And I did it all with a name you still can't pronounce and a skin tone you use as a punchline. The audience begins to shift. Eyes widening, heads nodding, breath catching. I took the oath of office the same as you would, but I didn't inherit that right. I earned it. He turned slightly, now addressing not just Karoline, but the room, the nation. Article 1, Section 8. Congress shall provide for the common defense, not the defense of some, of all. There's a gasp, a beat, a tension rising. I don't need to prove I'm American, he says. I've lived it, bled for it. But here's what I won't do. Now he looks her dead in the eye. I won't take lectures on patriotism from someone who thinks it lives in their zip code and dies at their skin tone. The room shifts. A sound begins, soft but growing. Applause, a few claps. Then more. Then a wave. Karoline blinks, suddenly small. Her smile falters. Her mouth opens, then shuts. She reaches for the mic, but thinks better of it. The moment isn't hers anymore. Kash doesn't move. If you want to debate policy, he says, voice crisp, final. Let's do it. But I don't take orders from people who think patriotism depends on skin color. The applause swells. The moderator sits back, stunned. The producers whisper behind the glass. And Karoline? She leans back, speechless. The clip is already being clipped. Interns scramble. Phones vibrate. Hashtags are born mid-broadcast. Kash doesn't look at the camera. He doesn't need to. He's said his piece. And everyone in the room knows they just witnessed something bigger than a debate. Something real. A patriot's reminder that this country isn't about who screams the loudest. It's about who shows up. And within minutes, the internet exploded. The clip hit Twitter before the commercial break ended. No chyron, no filter. Just raw Karoline Leavitt leaning in with the insult, and Kash Patel, calm as stone, returning fire with dignity and truth. Within minutes, it was everywhere. By midnight, Kash for All was trending in all 50 states. Right below it, American means all Instagram flooded with reels of Kash's monologue, layered over cinematic music, slow zooms, fire emojis, edits that made him look like a soldier walking through flames. TikTok exploded. High schoolers stitched his speech over their own family photos, parents holding naturalization certificates, immigrant grandparents at graduation ceremonies. Captions read, "This is my America too." One clip of a teenager wiping away tears mid-video hit 4.2 million views by morning. Celebrities jumped in. A-list actors quoted Kash's line, "I didn't inherit that right. I earned it." Athletes posted side-by-sides of him in hearings next to their own stories of being othered. John Legend retweeted it with, "This is the kind of patriotism that changes narratives." Journalists called it the moment of the year. One editorial in the New York Times read, "It wasn't just a takedown. It was a reframing of the entire immigration conversation on live television." Cable news looped it. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox had no choice but to air it, though they cut it short and pivoted. South Asian Americans lit up the timeline. Stories poured in. "My father cried watching it," one post read. "He's been told to go back for 40 years. Last night, he saw someone answer for all of us. Worry." Another wrote, "For once, we didn't have to apologize to be included." He didn't back down. He spoke as us, not for us. In WhatsApp groups across diaspora communities, aunties were sending the clip with captions like, "Finally, one of ours stood tall." Even veterans chimed in. A retired Navy SEAL posted, "Kash Patel served this country with integrity. Period. Patriotism isn't skin deep." And Karoline? Her team panicked. First came silence. Then a vague statement. She meant policy, not ethnicity. Too late. Screenshots, memes, fact checks. The receipts came fast. Old clips of her pushing real American language resurfaced. Her comment was being dissected in lecture halls and barbershops alike. Someone even edited a viral mashup of her words juxtaposed with military funerals of brown-skinned soldiers. The caption, "Who gets to stay?" She trended too, but not how. She wanted. Meanwhile, Kash said nothing. Not on Twitter. Not on Instagram. Not in any post. And somehow that made it louder. He let the moment breathe. But just when the world thought the dust might settle, Kash Patel stepped into a studio chair. The next morning looked into the camera and said something that would elevate it to something bigger. The next morning, the world waited. Headlines screamed. Clips spun across timelines. Commentators bickered on split screens. But Kash Patel sat quietly under studio lights. A single American flag standing behind him. No entourage, no notes. Just the man and the moment. The interviewer leaned forward, searching for blood. "Are you calling for her resignation? Do you want her canceled?" Kash shook his head. "I want her to understand." The host blinked. "Understand what?" He took a breath. "That the power of this country isn't in its perfection. It's in its promise." He didn't rage, didn't gloat. Instead, he spoke slowly, clearly, like someone who knew people were finally listening. "We all have the right to be here," he said. "What matters is what we give back." He didn't weaponize the moment. He widened it. For every kid who's been told they're not American enough, this isn't just about me. It's about showing up with more dignity than hate can handle. He looked straight into the camera. To the people who cheered her comment, "I don't hate you. I just hope one day you'll stand shoulder to shoulder with someone like me and realize we're fighting for the same country." That clip went viral too, but not because it was fiery, because it was fearless in a different way. It said, "I still believe in you, even if you don't believe in me." Across the country, something shifted. A kid in Iowa gave a class presentation on what it meant to serve. A South Asian Air Force pilot posted a photo in uniform with the caption, "Still standing, still flying." A young Latino voter tweeted, I didn't know where I fit until now. Even conservative veterans of color, men and women often invisible in both parties, found language for their pride again. Kash hadn't just clapped back. He had claimed space. And in doing so, he made room for others. And then, over footage of his parents holding hands in a crowded naturalization ceremony, over old photos of him in briefing rooms, over shots of soldiers saluting at sunrise, a voice rang out, "You don't have to look like everyone else to love this country. You just have to serve it." The music swelled, and the screen faded to black. She told him to go back to India. But what he did next brought the country back to itself. He didn't shout, didn't sink. He rose. And in that rise, something awakened. Something older than politics, deeper than headlines. The belief that America isn't about bloodlines or zip codes. It's about contribution, courage, and character. Kash Patel didn't win a debate. He reminded us what belonging sounds like. He showed us that patriotism doesn't wear one face, speak with one accent, or live in one neighborhood. It shows up in silence, in service, in strength held back until it's needed most. And now it's your turn. If you believe dignity beats division, subscribe. If you've ever felt out of place but still stood proud, share this. If you think America belongs to everyone willing to serve it, drop A in the comments, because this isn't just his story. It's all of ours. This is what America looks like. Fade out. Kash Patel walks off stage, head high, shoulders steady, and behind him, an American flag catching light. As it ripples in the silence,